Hey everybody, welcome back to The Hobby Musician. Today we are going to be looking at a time-lapsed entire builds montage of our kind of hybrid fretless guitar build. Well, the very first thing that you're going to see here is I'm making the neck blank, but the strips of wood that I kind of salvaged to use here were not thick enough. So you can see here, I actually start out by making two separate blanks. They're the width that I need, and I'm going to get them all clamped up here and glued together all flat. But once they're done, you can see here, I'm then having to glue them one on top of the other. And this is kind of a technique that you can use if you are using or salvaging and finding wood that isn't quite the dimensions that you need. You can kind of do creative things like this to build it up to whatever size or dimensions that you need for the piece that you're working on. And you can never have too many clamps. Well, after that, I move on to getting the strips for the body. Once again, I'm salvaging wood. So you can see here I'm using essentially like modular desk shelves that were left over, and I'm just running them through to cut them all into long strips that are the width I need for the body that I'm going to be making. And once I get the strips done, I didn't want that little plastic kind of veneer that they put on it, the cosmetic stuff to make it look like fake wood. So I'm using my planer and I'm running all the strips through just to skin off that plastic outer layer and sort of reveal the wood underneath it. Now, I need that wood kind of layer to be revealed because all of these strips are going to end up being turned up on their side and laminated together, and I just want to make sure I have a strong surface to bond. And here's that process. After all those strips are kind of scanned off, I'm just going through one by one, gluing them all together. And it was such a big block, you can see here, I kind of had to hold half of it together while I finished the other half, and then kind of come through and clamp the whole thing. All right, after that clamp, now it's time to start getting our designs on there. You can see here I'm using the template set that I bought, and I'm just trying to line up kind of a center line in the board, and I'm being very careful to go around and get all of the angles and cavities kind of traced in there, and even using the center line to kind of keep things organized for later steps. Now, after a quick jigsaw around the outside, I needed to clean up the edge. And you can see here, I'm just kind of attaching that template, and I'm gonna run a router with a flush trim bit, just little by little all the way around to make sure that we get a perfect kind of copy of that template, design that we're doing. Well, after the outside's done, now it's time for all the cavities. The kit, the templates that I got had all of the extra parts that could help us do the tremolo cavity, the handle grip, the electronics cavity. And you can see here, it just takes a lot of adjusting depths and moving templates, but ultimately, just little by little, we're able to get all the cavities cut out of our body. And here you can see we're switching up gears. We're now kind of in a real-time video. I wanted to take a second to show this. We did an entire video just describing how we made this jig for kind of an everyday miter saw that we're going to use to cut in the angled. We're making a scarf joint so that we can have an angled headstock. And you can see here I'm using actually a strip of extra leftover wood to hold this neck blank up on its side and against the jig. And even though this is real time, you can see I'm going very slow because I want to make sure that as the blade is going down, I want to end up with a very good smooth cut. So I'm going really slow and carefully. And by clamping and affixing our neck blanks to this jig, I'm able to really guarantee that I can get a 13-degree angle cut into that neck. And here, now it's time to glue it together. So I'm very carefully using the template to find, where my outside areas are, and then I'm drilling in guide screws that are going to help keep everything aligned. Even when I get the glue on there and clamp it down tight, it shouldn't move on me using those screws. All right, after we got that angle kind of glued and affixed, now we're back to kind of a real-time video. I just wanted to show this too, that, this is a very simple DIY trick where I'm using a straight board that I clamp down to my workspace as a guide. And I lined it up and I clamp down this neck blank so that I can just use this as a very simple, very straight guide and take multiple paths, just slowly kind of lowering that bit to cut in the truss rod channel. And it's super easy to do as long as you're kind of using one of these DIY guides. All right, now we got everything cut in there, and it's time to kind of take the excess off of this neck blank. So I just ran a jigsaw down, and then now I'm getting the template affixed on, and once again, running a router with a flush trim right along the sides of that so that the ending shape is exactly the same as the templates. All right, now it's time for the neck pocket. Now this one, I waited. I wanted to wait. I didn't do this with the last pass of Cavities because I wanted to have the neck with me. So you can see here, I'm taking my time, lining up the template on the body, and you can see the neck sitting there. I'm gonna take real care to slowly and pass by pass carve out or route out that neck, and then each time I would kind of take that off, measure it, make sure it was fitting the neck, and then we'd go from there. Now, I know we said this is going to be mostly fretless, but with the paint scheme that I wanted, first and foremost, I had to cut out all the fret slots by hand. Now, once they're all cut out by hand, now our kind of interesting part starts. The first 5 frets, I went ahead and installed just normal fret wire. But then you can see here, I'm using tape and I'm using syringes and enamel kind of fluorescent paint, and I'm injecting the rest of the neck or in a pattern, kind of a red, yellow, blue pattern, where the paint is going to fill up those frets so that I can have that fretless portion once I kind of sand it down. Well, after that all dried, it's time to kind of carve out the back shape of the neck, the profile. And I'm using just the faceting technique that you can find a lot of people, especially over at Crimson Guitars. They talk about this, where you're just using center lines and successive center lines to kind of slowly, do straight or flat faces, but you join smaller and smaller faces until you really have a great curve. And you do it all by hand, and it doesn't take that long. Now, one of the last steps for the neck is going to be the radiusing. So I said before, we had that paint that was kind of dried in the frets. Well, this is where you can come back and really kind of level off any paint that kind of comes out the top. And that's going to be an easy way to just make sure you got the whatever radius you decide that you want in your fingerboard. Well, now let's turn our attention to the electronics. You can see here I've got my trusty hand crank coil winding machine, and I've got bobbins here that I was just able to 3D print off of some, freely available, publicly available 3-dimensional files that are formatted for 3D printers. So you print them off, stick them up here, and then just go to town winding up your own custom pickups. Well, after they're all wound up, you can see here I'm in the kitchen. You'll notice that you can kind of see bubbles popping, and this is time lapse, so the bubbles seem like they're popping really fast. But during the wax potting, all that liquid wax is kind of flowing into the coils and into the center there, and the bubbles are showing you that the wax is kind of displacing any air, and over time, after about 15 minutes or so, the bubbles really slow down because all the wax is in there. Now they're good to go. Okay, let's head outside and start to paint up our custom paint job. I always do about 5 really light coats of primer, and I wait about 10 minutes in between coats just to kind of let the previous coat get tacky enough to hold an additional coat. I don't go very thick because I don't like runs kind of coming down in our paint jobs. But once that's done, now it's kind of the fun part. This is where we're going to do our splatter painting. You can see here, I got my really bright primary colors. I'm just using paint sticks. Kind of mix up the paint, get a glob on the end of it, and then come on over and sling it on. Now, of course, I'll let this dry, flip it over, do the same thing on the front, and that kind of gets our really cool one-of-a-kind paint job. And once it's all dry, I'm moving up here. We got clear coat. So again, I just try to do about five or six light coats, giving about 10 minutes in between, because this way, once again, we get a really good finished product that only takes a little bit of extra sanding to get a high gloss, a high sheen on our final body. Okay, we are almost there. It's now time to kind of do some initial wiring. So I've got my pots and kit that I bought. And I'm just using a piece of cardboard that I cut to fit into the electronics cavity so that I had the exact placements of these pots. So as I follow the wiring diagram, I can get them kind of attached to each other in roughly the right position so that now when I move over and I get the full finished guitar, all those pots are kind of already preloaded in the right dimensions. So here we're just installing things. We got the pickups that I'm putting in there, doing the final wiring to our pots, our harness. Got the tremolo springs kind of loaded in there. And then once I get the tuning pegs on, I'm just using some leftover like foam to kind of help wedge the tremolo so that it doesn't kind of, fall back onto the body. And honestly, after we get the strings on and get this tuned up, we are now at the point of the big reveal. Well, as always, I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, play on, my friends, play on.